system is an amazingly subtle and an incredibly effective system, essentially to serve 1% of 5% of the world's population. Terribly small. It's not even a pyramid. It's like a needle going up with a few very wealthy, very powerful people sitting on the top.
He says it's not even a pyramid. It's the point of a needle. That's how few people actually hold the power. It always has been. And for the people at the top, it's nothing more than a chess game.
I'd put off writing this book for a long time. I was sworn to secrecy. I'd been bribed not to write it. I'd been threatened when I tried to write it earlier, and I'd postponed it. I'd put off writing it until 9/11. And when 9/11 happened, I knew the story had to be told. It has to get out there. Most of the American people are totally unaware of what really goes on.
Greed finds a door, and it always finds someone willing to open it.
While I was still in business school in 1968, the National Security Agency recruited me. And the way that happened was that I was married to a woman whose father was very high up in the Department of the Navy, and one of his best friends was very high up in the National Security Agency. So they offered to interview me for a job, and I went in and I spent a couple of days there, especially one very intensive period when I was under lie detector interviews. And during that period of time, they discovered many weaknesses in me. I have a lot of weaknesses. And they identified me as a good candidate for an economic hitman.
Who are we to judge? None of us know what we do in his place. Ambition, money, power, these aren't weaknesses unique to him. They're human. He knows it better than anyone.
I think I'm a really good case in point of how the system can seduce you, how there's three very powerful drugs in our lives these days: sex, money, and power. And I was seduced by all three of those.
His name is John Perkins. He spent years doing the dirty work of the most powerful institutions on the planet. He wrote it all down in a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And they tried everything to stop him. Threats, bribes, silence. It didn't work. Now he explains exactly how the operation runs.
Economic hitmen work through private corporations, not directly for the government. That keeps everything much more secret, and it leaves the government out. The government cannot be implicated as long as this is being done through private consultants. The consulting firms, of course, are paid by the U.S. government as consulting firms, and people like me, then my salary was paid by this consulting firm.
Can you imagine this actually being real? It sounds like a movie, but it's not. Now he cracks down exactly what they do and how they do it. And I'm sure you'll be able to connect the dots to a lot of what we're seeing play out in the world right now. This is the mechanism. This is how it works.
Our job was to convince other countries to take very large loans, and then to convince the World Bank and other such organizations to give these countries huge loans, let's say $1 billion, to Ecuador, to build big infrastructure projects, power plants and transmission lines and distribution systems, ports, highways, industrial parks, things that didn't benefit anybody except the very wealthy people in those countries who were quite corrupt, and we corrupted them. So our job was to convince, let's say, Ecuador to accept $1 billion loan, convince the World Bank to give Ecuador $1 billion loan. 90% of that $1 billion would come back to the United States to pay for Halliburton, Bechtel, these kinds of, or these types of companies, to build the infrastructure, and then which would only serve the wealthiest people in those countries. And then the country would be stuck with this huge debt, which over time would continue to be refinanced and get larger and larger and larger. So that in fact today, Ecuador owes more than 50% of its national budget just to pay down its debt service, which means there's very little money left to go to pay for the education or health services for the poor people, who are the ones who suffered from these projects. It was their rivers that were destroyed as we built hydroelectric plants. It was their land that was destroyed, and while a few of their people got wealthy, as a few of ours did. So now they're saddled with this incredible debt that they can't possibly pay. And so we go in and demand our pound of flesh, very much like the mafia. That's why we called ourselves hitmen. We've done this in every country around the world that has resources that we covet. Often this is oil in places like Indonesia, Nigeria, Ecuador, Venezuela, Colombia, so many different places, but sometimes it's other resources. For example, in Panama, it was the Panama Canal. And in this process, we've managed to create the largest empire in the history of the world, and we've done it largely without military might. It's been done primarily through economic hitmen like me.
This is the real war. No bombs, no soldiers, just debt, corruption, and greed. $1 billion on paper and an entire country on its knees for generations. And it works because of one simple thing. If the people at the top can be bought, the whole country is for sale. Wherever there are resources, there is conflict. Always has been. Look at a map of the world's biggest crises today, and then look at where the oil is, where the minerals are, where the strategic routes run. It's not a coincidence. But what happens when a leader can't be bought? When someone actually says no?
Now, when the economic hitmen fail, as we did in Panama with Omar Torrijos, and in Ecuador many years ago with Jaime Roldos when I was there, when we fail, the jackals are sent in. And these are CIA-sanctioned troublemakers. They will try to foment coups in a country. They'll try to overthrow the president. If they're not able to do that, then they'll assassinate him. And Jaime Roldos of Panama, who was not overthrown, so he was assassinated. And Omar Torrijos Jaime Roldos of Ecuador, Omar Torrijos of Panama, the same thing happened. We economic hitmen failed. The jackals went in and assassinated these presidents.
Now, I'm not here to make accusations. I don't know the full investigation, and neither does anyone outside of it. But here are the facts. Omar Torrijos died on July 31st, 1981, when his plane crashed in the mountains of Panama. All 7 people on board were killed. The cause of the crash remains disputed to this day. The documents related to the investigation went missing during the U.S. invasion of Panama and were never found. 3 months earlier, the president of Ecuador, Jaime Roldos, the other leader Perkins mentions, died in a remarkably similar plane crash. 2 leaders, both refused the system. Both died in plane crashes within months of each other. You connect the dots.
And Omar Torrijos was a magnificent man. He had his faults, like everybody. But he saw that clearly what I was going to do. He invited me to this little bungalow outside Panama City to have a private meeting with him. And he said, look, I know what you're doing. I know the game you guys are playing. And I know what you're going to do is inflate all these forecasts. And you're going to give me a system that I can use and a few of my wealthy friends. But my country's going to suffer. And your country's going to get rich. And you're going to have a hold on me. What you really want is my canal. So I'm not going to let this happen. He said, but what I will do is if you will agree with me to come in here and do a study and put together a plan that really helps my people, helps the poorest of the poor, then I'll see to it that you and your company get more and more projects. But you got to be honest, you got to do good work. So basically what he was telling me is, don't be an economic hitman, be what you truly be what you say you are, and do a good job at it. And I welcomed this, of course, and ultimately so did my company, because it got business. But of course, what Omar Torrijos was doing in this process was defying the whole system, because the system is built on an assumption that the people at the top are all corruptible. And if you find someone at the top who isn't corruptible, then he can destroy the system, not only in that country, but in many other places. Because once someone starts to resist and someone starts to point out the truth behind the system and the fact that it can be opposed, then everybody in the system sees a threat and is in trouble. And so one day his Twin Otter plane, the presidential plane, blew up and he was killed. And I was waiting for it to happen. This is the way the jackals do things. And there was a lot of evidence that a tape recorder that he'd been given before the plane took off was a bomb. There's no question in my mind, and there's no question in a lot of the minds of a lot of the investigators throughout South America. People knew that this was a CIA orchestrated assassination. Of course, it hardly made our press.
The jackals. That's what he calls them. When the economic hitmen fail, the jackals come in. CIA-sanctioned operatives sent to foment coups, remove leaders from power, or assassinate them if nothing else works. And this wasn't just Panama and Ecuador. In Chile, a CIA-backed coup brought down a democratically elected president in 1973. In 1975, the CIA supported right-wing military dictatorships across 6 Latin American countries simultaneously through a coordinated operation. Researchers have identified at least 25 CIA-sponsored coups between 1963 and 1981 alone. And studies show that countries where this happened never quite recovered economically. Generations of people paid the price for a decision made in a boardroom thousands of miles away. This is the pattern. Economic hitmen first, jackals second, military third. And it worked. Every single time. But what he's about to explain next is something that happens every single day, in every country, completely out in the open, clean, legal, completely invisible. And nobody talks about it.
So much of this stuff that's done that is immoral, I think it's unethical, I think it really should be illegal, but the way it's done, it's legitimate because the laws are written to protect this system, to protect what I call the corporatocracy, the big business, big banks, and government people who are running this empire.
The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. And that's what makes it so effective. Think about it. When the people close to power know in advance that a currency is about to collapse or that oil prices are about to spike, that's not luck. That's the game. And the rest of us, the ones working, paying taxes, following the rules, we're just living in the aftermath of decisions we were never a part of. The world isn't fair. But the least we can do is understand it. Because you can't protect yourself from something you don't see. And you definitely can't trust the news alone to tell you what's really going on.
I was the only person on that 11-man team that knew the subtleties of what we were doing. I was the only economic hitman. I was the economist. I was the one who did all the forecasts. I was the one to arrange the loans. That all fell on me. The other men on that team were designing power plants, were designing the highways and ports to bring the fuels in to fuel the power plants, designing transmission lines, distribution systems, that sort of work. And throughout the industry, when I talk about these other companies, the Bechtels, the Halliburtons, the Stone & Websters, the Charles T. Maines, and the World Bank, I want to make it very clear that the majority of the people working for those organizations are not economic hitmen. They are technicians, they're engineers, they're doing what they believe is their job of designing systems. But there's always somebody at the top, there's always somebody in that organization that has a complete understanding of what's going on. It's very few people. Most of these people are in the dark about this, and they shouldn't be in the dark about it. I mean, it should be pretty obvious to them what they're doing, as it should be pretty obvious to all of us in this country where our tax money's going. It isn't that obvious. The system is an amazingly subtle and an incredibly effective system.
Most people in the system have no idea what the system is actually doing. The engineer designs the power plant, the economist builds the forecast, the banker approves the loan. Everyone does their job. Nobody asks the bigger question. That's how it works. You don't need everyone to be corrupt. You just need the right person at the top who knows exactly what's really going on. And below them, 1,000 good people doing their jobs, keeping the machine running without ever seeing the full picture. But here's what should really keep you up at night. It's not just happening out there, in some distant country. The numbers are closer to home than most people want to admit.
We have a statistic that we throw around in this country a lot, that 5% of the world's population, us, the American population, consumes 25% of the world's resources. Now that really bothers most of the rest of the world, that we're like this great octopus that reaches out with its tentacles and brings all the resources into us, and look at the lives we lead, while 3/4 of the world lives in destitution. Every day, 24,000 people die of starvation. And 30,000 children die of curable diseases every single day. And the people who live in the places where that's happening are angry. And they see us 5% of the world's population bringing in 25% of its resources, while so many of them live tragic, destitute, miserable, suffering lives. Needlessly suffering. It doesn't have to happen. But an even more important statistic, I believe, is that of that 5% of the world's population, only less than 1% controls more of America's resources than the 90% at the bottom. So in fact, 25% of the world's resources are being funneled into this country essentially to serve 1% of 5% of the world's population. Terribly small. It's not even a pyramid. It's like a needle going up with a few very wealthy, very powerful people sitting on the top.
24,000 people die of starvation every day. 30,000 children die of curable diseases every single day. Not because we don't have the resources. We do. More than enough. But because of where those resources end up and who controls them. This is the world the system built. And it's not a government doing this. It's not even a country. It's just a handful of people sitting on top of a needle, pulling the strings. Lobbyists, CIA officials, congressmen, billions of dollars changing hands. All of it out in the open if you know where to look. And still, most people have never heard of any of this. That's not an accident. The most powerful force in this system isn't money. It's silence. So the only thing left to ask yourself is, now that you know, what are you going to do with it?
Are the foods modified? Tomato, potato, asparagus, broccoli, cauliflower, almost all the basics are, purposely. And as you know, they have a terminator seed now, too.
Yes.
Because the farmers can't plant seed, you can't plant seed now unless you buy it from the government. They come up one season, and they're gone, which means they're already modified. Watermelons down here with seedless watermelon. I wouldn't even touch a watermelon with no seeds out. But if you breathe, what are you going to breathe? You can't call it air anymore. We breathe something that is overtaxing our body with toxins that we're trying to get through the day on. We have chemical sprays being sprayed over 245 major cities in the United States, and all over our planet now is an electronic metal smog. And I can tell you why that's done too. We have these Gwen towers that they have erected, which are also perpetrating that continuous thing. We have HAARP programs, High Frequency Active Aurora Research Project. We have ELATA over in Russia, Electrified Atmospheric Discharge. We have ISACAT, European Scattered Radar manipulation. All these things are broadcasting billions, I didn't say millions, combined billions of watts of amperage of ionic electrified air particles into the air. We are breathing now titanium, aluminum, barium, non-human T cells, all kind of other things that's being sprayed from ships that aren't supposed to be there. So you have metal particulation in your system. You have electrified air, which is poisonous, in your system. And then whatever else that the smokestacks and the exhaust from cars are there too. Unless you can clean that out, your body's not only going to age very quickly, the cells are going to deteriorate, and you're not going to function on the heights you should be. That's why most people are running around I call them comatose, dumbed down, brainwashed, vaccinated, inoculated, and encrypted. Any two of which make you unusable to a society that's trying to develop.
Heard those names before. But encrypted is
chipped. You go to the wrong, shouldn't you say this on TV? Let's put it away. Wrong lab that's making a prosthetic device for the beef from your teeth or leg, they probably put a chip in. Unless you're very careful. The food you eat is probably encrypted. If you have any vaccinated, you are encrypted. If you're in armed services, you're encrypted. They're trying to control a whole populace, and this is the best way to do it. Anytime anybody invades underneath your skin, 9 times out of 10 now you're encrypted. If you're not encrypted, you're probably mind controlled. There's so much going on now, Doc. I sound like I am psychotic. I'm not. And I'll never say I'm crazy. I'm not. I'm neurotic. My neurosis grows with the psychotic behavior of people and the apathy of people, the ennui of people who don't seem to understand what's going on. That's frightening to me. Because we're a planet trying to come under control. We're a populace, black and white, brown and yellow, that is under mind control, dying right off the bat, being experimented with, and we still don't get it. Those who have been dumbed down, comatose, brainwashed, inoculated, vaccinated, encrypted, any two of which takes them out of a usable society at this time, can't understand that. So they will fight the masters' wars, they will fight the globalist wars, they will take the globalist shots, they will let the globalists in the state raise their children, and we all sink. But the point is, again, the globalists are on their way out. That's why they're acting so crazy, but you watch my words. Their time is short. Consciousness is long.
They need digital ID, because when you suddenly have to control a huge population, a continental population, an international population. You can't just have lots of people, administrators keeping record. No, no, no. You're going to need a supercomputer, a network that keeps everything in check. Now, it starts off, doesn't it, as the ID card, which we're told, nothing to fear here. This is so because, we don't know who's in the country anymore. You are who you say you are. And of course, now we're going to have all these digital ways of doing our tax returns, which will link to our banking app. And I can guarantee you, soon enough, that's going to link back to the digital ID card, because that'll be linked to your national insurance number. We've also got now an NHS app. And they exercised that really nicely with the vaccine passports, didn't they? Now, what they're soon going to do, of course, is the NHS app is going to link back to your accountancy app. So when you have days off sick, it automatically registers. Then the government are going to come up with something to help control obesity, aren't they? Use this app to monitor the calories you're having and what food you're buying. So that's going to have to link to the NHS app, which is going to have to link to your accountancy app, which will link to your banking app. You can see where I'm going here. Soon enough, it's just going to be, why have multiple apps when you could have one big beastly app to do the lot of it? And when we end up in that situation, it's going to be incredibly hard to get out of it.